Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of April 23rd, 2015 is called to order. In remembrance of the 100th anniversary of the commemoration of the Armenian Genocide for April the 24th, we'd like to start the Design Review Board meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. In terms of the Design Review Board meeting, please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Charchin.
Present.
Board Member Malikian is absent. Board Member Mardian.
Here.
Board Member Palmer. Here. Board Member Simonian.
Present.
The report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on April 15th, 2015. The next item on the agenda is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. There are no oral communication cards, none. Which brings us to staff announcements. This time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Jay Platt to discuss the transfer of the Design Review Authority in the San Fernando Road Corridor redevelopment project area to the Design Review Board.
Okay, so I assume the board members know. Oh my God! Disaster. Thank you.
Always good luck with that.
Didn't hit the electronics.
You missed every single piece of electronic.
That's right. Couldn't have worked better. Here's a first time for everything. Thank you.
Some more.
So, no, it's good. Thanks. A couple of months ago, the City Council voted to transfer the Design Review Authority for the San Fernando Road Corridor to the Design Review Board. Previously, both redevelopment areas, the San Fernando redevelopment area and the DSP, or the downtown redevelopment area, all design review went through City Council. And this was based on a decision that because we're expecting to see more development in this area, and the Design Review Board has the architectural expertise to give a full review to these kinds of projects, that it was appropriate to make the transfer. In doing so, we don't have a lot of projects in the pipeline right now, but we wanted to just give you a little background to show you what the area includes, what the different kind of zoning conditions are in the area, so that you'll have an expectation of what types of projects might be coming your way. And then we'll show you a few samples of things that we've done in recent years to get a sense of the staff's thoughts and based on also council decisions on what types of design and development were appropriate in the neighborhood. So first we'll start with a map of the San Fernando Road Corridor. Starting down in South Glendale and extending up toward the far west part of the city, with Allen Street being more or less the boundary to the west. It spans both sides of San Fernando Road where it has both sides. It spans the single side of San Fernando Road where it abuts the railroad tracks in the center section here. And then we have the southern jog where San Fernando makes a kind of a jog over, and we have parcels on both sides of the street. In the past, when this was a redevelopment area, there were specific project objectives for this. So I wanted to share those with you, though we don't have redevelopment anymore. These are the kinds of projects or the types of goals that our economic development team might be bringing as they seek people to build or to redevelop in the area or to reuse existing buildings. First objective was to define and identify strategies for nurturing existing creative industry. This was a big issue for council. They saw this as an opportunity to bring more creative businesses into the kind of industrially zoned portions of Glendale. We're not going to be limiting uses to to creative uses, but that's certainly something that the economic development people will be looking to bring here. But you'll be seeing a wide variety of uses, I'm sure. Develop action plan to ensure or to encourage further development of creative industries in the district. Develop and promote an incentive package for creative businesses. With the loss of redevelopment, we can't really have as many incentives as we might have had, but that's still part of the goal. Define and publicize San Fernando Road Corridor. That's something economic development will be doing. And then outreach to target businesses to try to recruit opportunities or businesses that might see this as an opportunity site for them. The outline is a little hard to see in this drawing, but it's basically the same area that you saw just now with the little black line. It's probably better to see on the bright screen in the corner there. There are only a few zones in the San Fernando Road Corridor that we'll be dealing with. So there's a C3 zone, so we'll expect to see possibly some commercial development. There's industrial. We don't know how much. I'll explain what's happening in that area a little more. There's industrial mixed use, a few limited areas in the purple zoning toward the center here. There's an overlay with residential for industrial mixed use that we'll see I'm going to show you some close-up zoning maps so you'll see this a little better. And then we have some San Fernando mixed use zoning that was specifically to encourage a mix of residential and retail uses, live-work type situations in portions of this area. We have some park space, and then we also have transportation zoning for the area around the train station. So moving from north to south, I first wanted to highlight the area that's now the Grand Central campus that Disney owns most of. So you can see this blue industrially zoned area has an overlay of this kind of dotted hatch line. All of that property is owned by Disney and is part of the development agreement that the city entered into with Disney as it took over this area and expects to expand into the area over the coming years. And in the Disney area, the City Council is still going to be the design review authority. That's part of the development agreement, so that area is not going to be coming to you, but there are portions of this industrial zone that aren't part of the development agreement. So it's likely DRB will see these areas in the near future or distant future. The southern portion of the Disney area has a few key features that we wanted to point out to you. This is the city yard, where Public Works has a lot of its maintenance facilities and stores trucks and has a bunch of stuff going on there. The DreamWorks campus occupies this triangular site close to the river in the flyover area. This is the new Disney building. Now, Disney owns a lot of this, but this is their new building I'll show you a picture of or rendering of in a minute, and you've probably seen it. That was designed by Bolin Sowinski Jackson, a really nicely designed building.
That's the one that has the child care center in it?
Yeah. Well, the child care center is separate. So that's a separate building designed by Marmol Radziner, I think. So they're separate, but both really nice examples of the type of work we can hope to see. And then for me, this is a very exciting project up here. This is the Grand Central Air Terminal, which Disney is currently in the process of rehabilitating to turn into an events facility that's going to have some limited public access. I visited a few times during construction, and they're doing an amazing job. So that is something we're looking forward to its debut, which I think will be next year. So you can see this entire southern area probably won't be seeing a lot of activity at DRB. But as we move south, we see this purple area, which is largely industrial zoning with some of the industrial residential overlay in this hatched area.
What street does the industrial zone with the residential overlay start at?
It starts at Harvard.
Harvard, okay.
And then it looks like it jogs down and will probably come down on the next map a little bit.
Okay.
If you've driven on the freeway recently, this site here, I didn't highlight it, is where the public storage building is being built. So it's going to be an orange landmark for Glendale. That's not necessarily the use that we had expected or hoped for in this area, but because a proposal came in and it was a real proposal, we worked really hard to get the design of this building to kind of work with the idea that we're building basically a 6-story box to store stuff, but we're at this point happy that the design that was approved by City Council that we worked with the design team on is actually being built that looks pretty close to what was approved. And I think it's going to be an interesting building. This large site is, it's gone through a number of different names over the years. I call it the PPG site because Pittsburgh Plate Glass owned it for some time. But it's a series of industrial buildings almost forming a campus. It's, I believe, for sale right now. So there could be a large development site in this area. And then there are also areas where we abut different zones. And so there are points where we might be able to, in the SFMU zone, which we don't have here, so that's on a different slide. But there are proximities to residentially zoned areas, and that's something that we're going to deal with the way the board has in similar situations to carefully buffer the contact between the new construction in the corridor and the existing residential areas.
And that mustard color is R3050?
This is, that would be 1250, I think.
1650.
1650, let's go back. Oh, I didn't. It is 2250.
2250.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
So where are we? And then we also have SFMU zoning in the yellow areas extending kind of two fingers that extend along West Broadway and then also West Colorado. And those areas have been seen as kind of trial areas to see if we could get some extensive mixed-use zoning into this area, bringing more residential but finding interesting mixes that will enhance the kind of synergy with the creative businesses and whatever other businesses are built along here and bring residential closer to where people might work.
To Pacific, no?
What's that?
Goes all the way to Pacific. There's.
Yeah, I think this map is cut off. I inherited this map, so.
There's the mixed-use project that I was, or in the.
Yeah, I think.
180.
I can't remember the exact border there, but I think you're right.
Can we go back?
Sure.
To the, in this slide, some months ago, I saw some proposals that were being considered by the MTA, where they were creating new bridges that were, proposing new bridges that were spanning across San Fernando, connecting the LA side to San Fernando, whereby cars would avoid the train altogether. But they were very hypothetical because there were these big swooping bridges that had huge radiuses, but it was occurring around Wilson and San Fernando, etc. Are those actually being proposed? Are those really on the table, or were they just kind of dreams?
I don't know that they're dreams. They've been studied. I know there's grant money that's been brought in, so consultants are studying them, and they've had a series of public meetings to avoid the grade level crossings, but I'm not sure where it is right now.
Okay.
There's a lot of metro money out there and possible future bond money, so it's a possibility that things are going to change there.
So it'd be good to overlay that with the current zoning to see if there's some special opportunities where those bridges come in.
Yeah, I think I'll get to that in a second because we have a transportation-oriented development zone proposed that is going to be looking not just at that zone but about transportation up and down the corridor. And we've got several $1 million in grant money for a bunch of different projects along there. I'm not sure which streets actually have those crossings. Coming down to this more southern area, we start having some smaller buildings. And we expect that this area will likely have more of a pedestrian emphasis, where the areas to the north, we don't think development is actually needed to encourage pedestrian use. We obviously have sidewalks there, but buildings like the public storage building will never be pedestrian friendly, and we didn't expect that area next to the freeway to achieve that. So this southern area, particularly after you round the curve here and start coming south, where we have these kind of smaller lots, some older buildings, we have opportunity sites for historic rehabilitation projects down in this area also, as well as new construction and just rehabbing of existing buildings. And that pedestrian emphasis ties into the TOD area, which is this SFMU zone here, and also extends into this zone to the north. This is the existing train station, the transportation center, And our mobility team is actively working on, with grant money, to develop a transportation-oriented development study here that's going to integrate with the hospital over here, with the neighborhoods over here, try to enhance business friendliness, enhance the pedestrian experience, enhance the desirability of this area for new development so that we can get people coming here on the train and working in the area, as well as people living in the area who are going to get on the train and go downtown or up into the valley. So this is the area where we expect to see a fair amount of transformation. We have a lot of smaller lots, very mixed kind of building stock right now. And the goal is to kind of work with the money that we've gotten, and I think we're working on a series of grants. We've already gotten one. I think we're in the middle of a series now, and there's possibility of future grants to kind of really enhance this area.
And when you mean grant, would it actually go towards public infrastructure to enhance the streets, or would it be more planning?
It's a mixture. Right now it's planning grants, but there are brick and mortar grants. And for example, we have grants for enhancing pedestrian safety near schools right now that are actual streetscape improvement grants. I don't know. I'm not involved with these as much, so I don't know that we have any implementation grant money right now. So.
Are those federal grants that are flowing through?
It's probably, some of it's coming from California, from state bond measures. Some of it's coming from sales tax, and there must be, I assume there's federal money coming in also. But the bigger grants that we have are administered through Metro. They may pull from different pots, I'm not sure. So here are a couple of examples, if you don't have any more questions about kind of the zoning area. So you can see there's kind of a different character to each of these areas, but the thing that links them is that they've always been kind of industrial areas. They've always been on a major thoroughfare. San Fernando Road is a historic thoroughfare that's linked, Los Angeles to the city of San Fernando and the Mission. And early on, it became a highway. It was kind of one of the first major roads linking LA up into the valley. And so it has a long history of being, a major thoroughfare. Nothing that we're proposing is going to change that. And so we're going to be looking at uses and then designs that are compatible with this kind of streetscape. But based on lot sizes and existing conditions, we might be seeing proposals for different types of buildings along the way. The thing that links them is a kind of industrial look overall. So we're not, in general, we don't force people to design in any one style. But as we work with applicants in this area and as you review projects in the area, I expect that we're going to see buildings that have a little more of a machine aesthetic, a little more of an industrial look. The Disney building is a nice example of, I don't expect we'll see a lot of buildings of this scale or even quality necessarily, but it's something to aspire to because it is a very lovely building when you see it. Here's a rendering of Grand Central Terminal, Air Terminal, showing the four arched areas correspond to four arches on Airway that have been closed up for decades. They're opening those doors or those arches, and there's going to be a great hall in between with a super high ceiling that's going to be their event space. We're hoping that public access will be at least once a year, but and it's part of the development agreement that there will be limited public access here, so we're going to work with Disney on that. And then up until the time redevelopment ended, we had a program that was called the Facade Grant Program, where through redevelopment we would work with applicants who were just making facade improvements, usually not new construction, but in a couple of cases we even went there. And it was basically $50,000 to just spruce up your storefront. And it was a great program, and all of this was administered at staff level. But what I wanted to show you with these is that we see these as kind of small projects, small transformative projects. These might be things that come to us that we'll work on as exemptions, so they may never come to the board. We can do some of this kind of work at staff level. Some may be administrative design review. But this is the kind of aesthetic that we found applicants wanted to bring to the area and that we were also encouraging in a lot of cases.
Jay, are those grants still something that will maybe come back to?
Not now because of redevelopment being lost. If the city ever was in a budget position to bring them back, I think in terms of bang for the buck, it was a pretty good trade-off. for streetscape enhancements. Of course, it was very sporadic. It was just as someone came to us, we would work with them on a grant. So we weren't looking at blockscapes or kind of looking at the urban design aspect. It was just project by project. This was a lovely example that, not the most amazing design, but a very nice transformation of a project. This project obviously went in two different directions, one a little more traditional, one a little more industrial. What we started finding with some of these projects was that, modest interventions made a big difference, but we started finding that pretty much everyone who came to us wanted to install these canopies over windows, regardless of what direction they faced, and just hold them back onto the wall with tiebacks. So because we were seeing them so often, we sort of were like, oh my God, this is the facade grant canopy. So we started pulling people away from that and trying to get other alternatives so we didn't have kind of a monotonous aesthetic that we were approving. This was a building that got a facade grant that was for the lower part of the building, but then they also put this addition on, which we reviewed at staff level at the same time. And we think that was a successful project. Oh, that's where I end. So those were just a few examples we wanted to share with you about where we think this is going to go.
Thank you for that presentation.
And a lot of it will be in your hands. So.
And what street does it end at? Is it on the southern end? Is it at the boundary of the city, basically?
I think it's at Tyburn,
To Las Feliz.
Ends at Tyburn, right down here in the Diamond.
Diamond, yeah.
This little
So
Diamond
basically
neighborhood.
at the boundary of the city.
Yeah.
Just a little south of the station.
Yeah, so this residential area is out. You can see here the black line kind of jogs around the residential area so that it can just hug the buildings along San Fernando.
Tyburn.
Yeah. Actually, officially, it looks like it's Rosslyn and then Tyburn for this little property there. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. J.
thank you.
And with that, move on to the next case, I assume.
Okay, this evening, actually, we only have one case on the agenda. It is for a design review board project at 337 North Cedar Street. I believe that Chairman Mardian.
Yes, I'll have to recuse myself. I have a conflict of interest on this project, and I'll pass the gavel to the...
There are nomination to elect a chair pro tem. Voted for Art. All right. Mr. Simonian, please.
All right.
I should say that there's a motion to have
Motion
Second.
second and
okay.
a. Thank
We
you very
do
much.
have a
So
two
unanimously elected as chair pro tem.
I wasn't sure.
You
who
don't
that
mind
was
passing the
going to.
gavel?
Have a good night.
Okay, so, as I mentioned, the project is located at 337 North Cedar Street. Currently, the project site features a 1,772 square foot, two-story, four-square craftsman-style home constructed in 1910. The proposal is to construct a four-unit, two-story addition at the rear of the existing residence, and also to provide 12 parking spaces within a semi-subterranean garage, and that parking would include both for the four new units and for the existing residents as well. The project site is rectangular in shape, surrounded by multifamily residential buildings, and there are no protected trees on the site. The new project will consist of two bedroom units and two three-bedroom units, ranging from approximately 1,200 square feet to just shy of 1,700 square feet, with two units on each floor. The structure has been designed to complement the existing four-square house. As you noted in your staff report, the site plan, again, is predominantly driven by the fact that the existing two-story, four-square craftsman-style residence will be maintained, and the new addition, the 4 units located to the rear of the existing two-story. The buildings will be attached for a length of up to approximately 19 feet, and that would be the length of the stairway located between the two structures. And that stairway helps to break up the massing, but yes, that the two buildings are currently linked as proposed. The garage, the semi-subterranean garage, will be accessed off a singular driveway located along the southerly interior property line, and the primary walkway leading to the residences will be located on the other side of the existing house on the northerly side. Landscaping, common open spaces, and private patios are interspersed throughout the project. There is one common patio located sort of towards the front of the 4 units, above podium, above the garage, and there is another common outdoor open space area to the rear of the structures. The existing lot has obviously somewhat of a wide, generous front setback because of the location of the residence, and that's not going to change. So essentially the street facade will pretty much remain the same from Cedar Avenue. The second portion of the staff report focused on mass and scale. Now, again, you have an existing residence, 2 stories in height. The addition at the rear is essentially going to be similar in height, but obviously much more massive simply because of the additional 4 units. This is going to go over my notes. The 4-unit addition, as I mentioned, is located directly behind the existing residence. So the building mass in some sort of other feature is going to be obscured by the house. And so it does not create the impact that it would typically if it was built up to the street level or if they were to demolish their existing residence. The addition is generally the same height as the current house, and the property is surrounded by multifamily residential developments, 2 stories in height, both on both sides and across the street. So it is located within a neighborhood of similar height and massed structures. The perceived massing of the project is somewhat softened simply because the project is located behind the existing residence and also features similar type of design elements and similar craftsman-inspired beach architectural elements to try to blend with the existing residence.
How do you get?
The last portion of the staff report focused on design and detailing. Again, the existing 4-square, because of the existing residence, the existing residence would essentially be eligible for the historical register, as noted in the staff report. It is a boxier building. It has a primary hipped roof. It features a center dormer. It has a generous front porch at the front. It's actually clad both in wood shingles up on the second level and wood siding down below with certain original elements in terms of windows and the stone brick porch. That particular historical residence is going to be maintained and preserved, so any of the siding, any of the woodwork will be repaired. The windows are, at this point in time, slated to be replaced with new block frame windows. So those 3 of the current much more architecturally significant windows will be maintained and preserved in place, but then the majority of the other windows on the existing structure will be replaced with block frame wood windows. The units, obviously, to the rear have somewhat been designed to try to match the front house. It provides the house, I should say the addition at the back, features hardy board siding in two widths, so there is a distinction between the upper floors and the lower floors. They will also feature, the elevations will also feature wood-framed windows, recessed. None of them will be obviously sliders. They will all be single or double-hung windows in pairs primarily. You also see that the railing system is somewhat of a picket fencing to try to better match the front house. And with the exception of certain conditions and considerations that staff is going to go over, ultimately the design was inspired and presented to better match the existing residence. The staff ultimately has worked with the applicant to show essentially what is on the board. There is a general recommendation to approve with conditions and considerations. To read over through the items, one would be to retain the existing materials on the existing residence, the wood shingles and siding, the concrete block porch base, the wood details in porch, and the subject windows listed on the window schedule, and to repair only where necessary. The second condition is to ensure that all block frame windows will be recessed within the wood frames and have wood sills, and that all new windows on the existing house have external grids on the upper sash. Third item was to introduce more variety to the window pattern of the new building by converting some of the paired windows into separate adjoining punched openings. Fourth would be to clarify the color palettes of the windows at the existing and new buildings. The window trim and color should match the sash. And 5, to propose a stone veneer base that is more appropriate to the craftsman style. And this would be the stone veneer base that's featured on the addition at the rear. And last would be to maintain the existing palm trees in the street front setback. Considerations include consider providing entrance canopies, overhangs above the front unit's doors, and those to be designed to be compatible with the proposed building style. As you'll note that the doors themselves are somewhat on a blank elevation at the rear building portion, and so to provide obviously those little overhangs. 2 would be to consider eliminating the handicap ramp proposed at the existing residence's front porch, and if the ramp is maintained, to redesign the railing system to better match the proposed railing featured for the new addition. And last but not least is to consider providing scored, colored, or other decorative paving at the walkways and driveways. Staff did not receive any telephone calls from any of the neighbors surrounding the property. We did receive one letter from the Glendale Historical Society, in which case they pointed out the style of the existing home is more four-square rather than four-square craftsman. They actually had concerns regarding the fact that the building is being attached to the existing residence and not detached. There was also some recommendations with regards to the windows that are being proposed, and that if the project is moved forward by the design review board, that a qualified structural engineer experienced in historic buildings take a look into the matter of the shoring for the existing structure during the excavation and construction of the adjacent subterranean garage. But they do agree that the building is eligible for listing, and they are very grateful to see it being preserved. So with that said, that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Can we get the pictures of the property?
Yes,
Do you have a color board?
we do.
Do we have a picture of the back side of the existing residence, existing building?
We do. And let me get those. Those would be in the packets, actually, with the.
When we say this is eligible, is the applicant proposing to go with that eligibility, or, and where I'm coming from is if the proposed development is attached and it's different, does that negate the historic value of or being eligible?
The owner applicant we've talked a lot about the possibility of designation. They've chosen not to pursue that, even with the Mills Act being a possible incentive to do so. We're still treating the property. The property's been identified. I don't know if Vilja mentioned fully, but this property's been in play since 2005. With various proposals originally that would have called for demolition of the building. It went through several hearings with the Environmental Planning Board, which is now defunct. This was actually the last case ever heard by EPB. And EPB voted to deny the issuance of a demolition permit and to identify the property as a historic resource. So we're treating the restoration work and the rehabilitation of the existing house as a kind of a restoration project, whether or not it's on the Glendale Register, because it's identified as historic. And we're not in position to force someone to designate a property. So
that was my next question.
Yeah. In terms of touching, even if this were a historically designated house as it stands, it is very common for additions to abut historic structures. And you can think of major libraries around the country. Historic Preservation Commission just last week approved the addition of a stair tower on the side of the Masonic Temple. So that's definitely, so there's an idea that there are interventions that are made on historic structures. When we were working with the applicants on this building, we, for many years, had said, see if there's a way to develop the rear portion of the lot. And they've come now with a proposal that we think does that in a way that meaningfully preserves the front house. The front house is being preserved as a full 360-degree object in space, though there will be this one section where the new building abuts it. And part of that, I believe, is necessitated by zoning in terms of where they can set their house back, and Vilja could probably address that better. If buildings are separated, they're required to have a 12-foot clearance eave to eave, which pushes the building further west on the site and leads to some zoning issues.
Well, on that note, if the buildings were separated to provide for the 12-foot setback from eave to eave between the existing and the proposed, and the building is shifted west towards the commercial, what hardships does that propose on the addition, zoning-wise?
If the building was redesigned to provide the 12-foot minimum clearance between the buildings, the parking in the subterranean garage would be affected. So they would have essentially at this point in time they have 12. They would be losing, I believe, 5 parking spaces, simply because they would not have the required turning radius or clearances on both sides of the drive aisle. So their parking would be affected. Most likely, their massing and scale, so the actual units themselves, whether it be the number of units or the internal layout or the number of bedrooms. So,
just hypothetically, though, we have the parking structure going to a 1-foot setback from the property line, and then it seems as though there is an 8'3" separation between the parking structure, say, and the building. Mm-hmm. And so if the parking structure stayed where it is and just the building above shifted and reduced the rear common open space, would that kind of cause any sort of a setback issue or something? Because now we have an R1250 abutting commercial, and so the rear setback or interior setback, whatever it is, would be minimum 8, average 11, right? Something like that.
There's one wrinkle there. If you look at the basement plan or the garage level plan, there's a utility easement.
That's what I was going to mention. There's actually an electrical power pole that requires a 5-foot clearance, mm-hmm. and so that impacts the garage. And in terms of the interior setbacks, the minimum interior setback would be 5-foot minimum, 8-foot average on the first floor, 8-foot minimum, 11-foot average on the second floor, and 11-foot, well, there is no third floor at this point, okay. So.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Here they are. And so we have the designer and also the engineer, Mr. Armin Chiragi.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. If you would please state your name for the record.
My name is Armin Garay with GA Engineering in Tarzana, California. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Welcome.
This has been one of the most challenging projects we've worked on, to preserve some the historical. We don't normally do historical buildings, but we looked at it as trying to work with the planning staff at the Glendale, and they've been very helpful. I know my staff been talking to them on a regular basis for months. I don't know if it's been close to a year maybe. So we've gone back and forth numerous times trying to take into the consideration of the expertise of your staff in the historical buildings in the city of Glendale. I think we have a good project. Some of the considerations we've done, we try to maintain it and try to blend the new building to the existing building. And sometimes the rendering and everything else, when you look at the rendering and the pictures, they don't really do justice to what it's going to be at the end. If you look at the buildings on the pictures and imagine that being farther set back, you really don't see, once you get the next buildings and the driveways and the walls and block walls over there, you really don't see the massing as you see on those pictures the way it's rendered. So the view from the street and the public, it is not going to be the mass that you see over there. That being the building, and if you look at it right now from the street, you hardly can even see what's behind the building. And I'm not saying that that's going to be how it's going to be. Obviously, we're going to see some massing over there, but it's not going to be something that's going to be the standout of the building. You're still going to get the main building under. But going back to the building, I mean, we tried to look at the architecture of the building, try to match it, and try to do our best to preserve the integrity of the building and the character of the building and try to work with it. Some of the items that you talked about, the 12-foot, I mean, by pushing the driveway back, the way you said, the separation in the garage, we actually lose 6 parking because now we have to provide our handicap parking on the other side, so we will lose our landing. So there is quite a bit of a loss on there too if we go do that. The ramp we put over there just for accessibility issues on the front. I think there is a way that we're going to be able to eliminate that, because it should be able to justify. I don't know if historical buildings, they have some stuff, leeway, some to get away from not doing that. There should be some exceptions where they say we don't have to have any accessible ramps going to the front unit. So with planning staff, we'd be glad to, I don't like it, but to put it over there just to have the access, to meet the accessibility requirements, we'd be glad to take that out. I don't have any problem with that. Actually, I would like it. As part of preservation and working with the windows and the color scheme, we've worked with your staff for all this time, and we'd be glad to do whatever it takes as part of the color scheme or the windows, changing them to meet whatever the requirements that you condition our projects. Have any questions? I'll be glad to answer.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
In this, looking at this on the left side as you're facing the building, what consideration have you given to the apartments on the left? I see you've got some balconies on the second floor. How does that relate to the, you're only like 6-7 feet away?
Are you talking about on the left-hand side, right?
As you look at the building on the left side.
The south side.
South side.
On the south side. Okay. And what was the question? One more time.
The question was, I see you've got a balcony and you've got some windows, living room, bedroom. How does that relate to the apartments' windows and exposures on that side, since it's so close?
Well, we have to. The setbacks, we still got our 8-foot setback.
But I mean, for instance, where you have the living room with the balcony, is that looking onto?
It's like a private, like a little patio open.
My question is that looking onto a living room or bedroom or dining room of the apartments 6-7 feet away?
At this time, at this moment, I'm at loss for your good answer for you because I don't know.
Okay.
But the point is, and I don't want to be, but it's no matter where we put it, there is going to be windows on the opposite side for apartment buildings, and we're going to have windows over here. We got bedrooms, we got living room. So no matter where we go, we cannot hide from them unless we just say don't put any windows, to put them on this side, on that side. Unless we totally go back and say don't put anything there. There is somehow, whatever it is, and being 8 feet away from it, and then they got another 5 or 6 feet on the other side, and I'm not sure how much it is. I think it's a little more than that. But you assume it's about 14, 15 feet. There's going to be a block wall or some kind of fence wall over there that will give it some protection from it. And there's going to be some landscaping, some whatever it is. But as far as the windows, I don't know exactly if it faces directly in front of it or not. But it's, in a way, we can't. I don't know if there is any ways we can do anything about it. We'd like to, but...
Well, one thing staff could help with is studying the precise location of any windows. That balcony could be shifted in a couple of different ways if we thought that there was a privacy issue. We also don't have anyone here complaining, but that's often the case in a multifamily zone, so it's nice to consider. Yeah.
No.
And my second question.
One more thing.
Okay.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Originally, we had thought about putting a window in the front, too, but that faces the driveway coming in, and that would, I don't like the idea of just the cars just coming in and illuminating the living room all the time, every time other people drive in and out. So that's why some of the windows over there was eliminated on that side.
But your elevation in the
Show
top
them.
right shows a window.
Where is that?
there.
Sure
Yeah, it's
are.
in the elevations, and we were expecting it to be there. And
I don't know, I'm just looking at the plan, and I thought we'd eliminated that window.
That was a question I had.
Top right.
Yeah, I know, I see it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But I thought we took it out, but it's still there.
In all these months of designing, did you ever consider doing just 2 units? And having separation?
We considered doing six units. Demolish the building, not me, the owners.
I just wondered, has it
I
always
know.
just been 4?
No, it was not financially practical, or that was not what we were commissioned to look at. Would it make sense? I don't know. I'm not the one paying for the property. All I know is the owners did purchase this property a few years back, thinking that, or they were under impression based on somebody or whatever it was, that they can come and demolish the house and build a brand new building. And we went back and forth with the Historical Society, and it was really not a point where it was a historical building. It could be there, it couldn't be there. They commissioned 2 or 3 different historical experts, and they came to different conclusions at whether it is historical, is it significant, or is it not significant, and we had reports on it, and we went back and forth, and unfortunately, it's one of those things that when you sit on a project for so long, and it just financially is taking such a big toll on the owners, as far as all the studies, all of the going back and forth, and all the time, that it comes to a point where really is nothing. Sometimes it really financially becomes prohibitive to go and do what we want to say. But at the end of the day, I'm not the one making the financial decision. They have to make the decision as far as what would be and what wouldn't be acceptable.
So the short answer is no.
I have a question for Mr. Platt. If you said the environmental board said they could not demolish it,
right.
So if you can't demolish
But no,
it.
they didn't say
If
they
they
couldn't
didn't-
demolish it. They said they'd require an EIR
Correct.
to
Oh,
proceed.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Yes.
I may have misspoke.
Okay.
They were, the applicant was given the option if they wanted to proceed with the demolition, which was originally proposed to demolish the house and to construct new multifamily residential building, they would have to go through the EIR process.
Understood.
Instead of going through the EIR process, they elected to go ahead and maintain and preserve
And to add in the rear.
and to add at the rear. Right now, by code, they would be permitted to have up to 6 units on the project site. They are maintaining the existing residential and obviously adding 4 additional units for a total of 5.
And during our work
The-
with the applicants, could we
no.
go ahead?
No. During our work with the applicants on this particular proposal, actually, they came in with 4 3-bedroom units. And they were underparked, and they actually went ahead and made modifications to the original boxier design, and they eliminated 2 of the bedrooms and provided 2 2-bedrooms as opposed to 4 3-bedrooms. So 2 2-bedrooms and 2 3-bedroom units.
I mean,
I have some other questions.
Yes.
The public portion of, we've gone through the minutes, so at this point, we're going to ask you some questions, and if you would, please bear with us.
definitely. But one thing I want to make a
And,
comment.
please, before
Okay.
we get to that, if you
That's
would.
fine.
That's why I made that comment.
Okay.
Insofar as the front house is concerned,
Yes.
is it going to be maintained as a single-family home?
I don't know. I don't understand what you mean by
Yes.
single-family home.
It would be maintained. It's required to be maintained as a single-family home.
So one
of the
family would
5
live there?
units.
Yes, it is one dwelling.
And so, and this is a question for staff, insofar as a single-family home that's being renovated, why is a ramp even necessary for a single-family home?
It is not. I spoke to the building official, Jan Edwards, and in this case, they would be able to go ahead and apply for building code section 1102-A.
Some sort of an exemption,
Exactly, which allows
clarification.
for the existing building to be exempted from the handicap ramp requirement as long as it stays a single-family residential building and it's separated by walls between the buildings, because at this point in time, the 2 buildings are going to have one wall abutting another wall. It's not going to be a common wall. Also, that there are no party areas with amenities that would be shared by all 4 units per se. So there's not like a swimming pool or a common room that the front unit individuals would have to have ADA handicap accessible ramping system to go to this common amenity space
Got it.
at the rear.
So in other words, we have a single-family home in the front that's being maintained as a single-family home. We just happen to have a 4-unit in the rear, and the 4-unit is what we're providing accessibility to, insofar as ADA is concerned.
But in this case, they are exempt from that requirement, correct?
From even on the 4-unit?
No, not from the 4-unit. For the
Yes.
4-unit would have to be ADA compliant,
Sure,
correct?
makes
But the
sense.
front unit would not have to provide the ramp.
And then insofar as the rear units are concerned, the 4-unit at the rear, it shows an elevator that connects the subterranean parking or the semi-subterranean parking, whatever the case is, to the first floor. Does that elevator need to go to the second floor as well?
From my I don't want to misspeak.
I can make a comment.
This is a question for staff. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I can.
I understand, but it's a question for staff. Thank you.
I am not a building code expert, so I would have to defer to the building official, but I don't believe that all units have to be handicap accessible. I believe a percentage has to, so that because they are providing the ramping, or they're providing the lift, and those first 2 units on the ground floor would be handicap accessible, that is all that would be required by the
And then
building code.
we're assuming the second floor will be accessible with stairs.
Correct.
Yes.
And those are the common stairs that join both structures.
Got it. And, yes, Ms. Palmer.
So if this building, the new building is attached, the whole rear portion of the existing building becomes solid and all the windows and doors are eliminated. How does that change the interior functioning of the existing?
Right now, those windows that are on the existing residence, correct, would be blocked But it would essentially just be it would be a solid blank wall.
The bedroom at the second floor that abuts the stairway still has one window.
Correct.
We'll have to make sure that meets light and air requirements. The bathroom has a window facing north, so it doesn't really need another window there.
What about the access in the back?
That would be
Rear
eliminated.
access, that was going to be my question. You're speaking of the rear access.
I don't know what the
to
floor
building.
plan is, so I'm just saying it, that could affect the function of the existing house.
There needs to be a fire code, and also other sections require a rear exit
The rear exit, correct. And they-
to any single-family residence, and there's no rear exit on the plans.
I don't even know if, are we talking about a second floor exit for the single-family home?
I'm just saying this whole back.
I don't think
you
it's
wouldn't
required,
need
though.
a second floor,
Not for a single-family home.
not for a single-family home. If it was an apartment, yes, but not for a single family.
Really?
So right now, there are two stairways for the 4-unit project. You have the one that's facing the commercial, and then the one that's in between both buildings. But from my understanding, you don't need a secondary access on the second floor for the existing residence, no.
But do we know what this bottom floor
That,
is? That room?
that we do not. I'm going to look towards Jay.
We have, at the bottom floor, there's a living room to the north abutting the stair tower, and that has windows facing north. The kitchen has a bay with 3 windows facing south. So there'll be no windows facing east on the first floor.
So
I'm sorry,
what-
west.
But I don't know what that, there's a door on the first
There's a door in the.
I'm
But
just
there's a
asking what
middle
that door
bedroom.
leads to.
No, never mind.
I'm sorry, which door would that be?
Here, on the first floor, there's a door
Oh, on the photos.
actually
Yeah, that's a rear door right now
to,
to the yard, I suppose. I mean,
From
let me
where?
look. I'm not. Sometimes they don't give me the photos, so I'll have to look at yours.
Maybe it's a
So
question for
on
the
the-
applicant.
I'm just saying, is it,
It looks like it's a doorway from the dining room. So,
I just don't know what this room is, and so.
This is
this would be the dining.
this is what's now. It looks like it's an L. This is probably the kitchen. This might be a laundry room or a mud room.
Yeah, whatever it is, I'm
You
just
might
saying, it's
Double check with the applicant.
something to check.
I actually had some questions, but I think it'd be best if you would come up here so I could point him.
Of course.
On the drawings, it might be easier to communicate. I'm not sure where our,
Pointer is,
Should be
oh,
in the corner.
perfect. And so, so we have the units on the ground level.
Yes.
And then I assume this is some of your common open space?
Yes.
And then how do you access this common open space? So if I'm in this room, if I'm in this unit, how do I get over here?
There's a walkway over here that we can go across over here and also over here.
Oh, okay, so is there a door
Yeah, the
that's here?
sliding doors that will through the private open space that could go.
And then, but you're showing a wall here.
It's like a gate. You can eliminate
And
that.
then what is the level of this? What is the grade over here?
That would be the same grade that's in the back.
And it's the same grade as this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so this wall, and then what is this setback?
It's 5 feet, so maybe about 3 feet passageway over here, so we can go across.
And then same for over here?
We're gonna have a walkway. We got the stairs, the access that they can come over here also. We need a exit to be able to for discharge, for the open space to be discharged over there. So this over here is blocked by the.
No, my question was more if you want to have a cup of coffee back here?
Yes,
How
you
do
would have to go across over here.
Okay. And is this the entire 800 square feet, the 200 per unit times 4?
You got 16 feet by 70, so you're looking about, well, if you take these out, well, you're looking 700.
There's actually
Yeah.
there's a diagram if you'd like me to put that up for the open
Basically,
space.
the entire common open
No,
space?
the common open space is broken up between the area at the rear. There's a common patio that is built on top of the podium garage, and then also the area that is somewhat, I should say, framed by that,
Ramp?
the ramp, correct.
No, if you take the ramp out, there is a big
That's
space
a
over
big-
here that could
correct.
be.
That's where I'm going with all this, yes.
Yeah.
Right, so they would be able to have,
Do we have that diagram?
we do.
Okay, so another question, just bear
Okay.
with me. If your parking structure stayed exactly where it is, and you
Okay.
don't move anything of the parking structure,
Yes.
and if this building moved this way, and your rear setback got reduced, and you basically went, imagine you went up to this line almost.
All the way to the end.
Imagine you went to 8 feet from the property line. So this got shifted all the way, and then your common open space was here. Why is that, something was mentioned that that would create problems, and I'm wondering, has that been looked into?
Whether we can shift this
Yeah,
back.
you just shifted.
I don't know.
Okay.
Because what happens is some of the requirements for the Glendale, city of Glendale, I'm not 100% sure. And I have my partner, and he's the one that pretty much set it up. And I don't know, what is the required setback for the backyard
First
over
floor is
here?
5 feet, average of 8 feet, and then
For
on the
the
second
required
floor is
setback?
8 feet, average of 11 feet.
Okay, so this potentially could be,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, right now, you have on the second floor 17 feet and 15 foot 9. If you shift this thing 4 feet over, 4 foot 9, you're still meeting the 11 feet. You would get, if you shifted it 6 feet, you would still get 11 feet there and then 8 feet here. So that was just a question. And
so we shift more of the open space in the middle, basically what you're saying.
it's an idea, and I just wanted to see if you studied that. Besides that, do we have any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
No, right at this point, I'd probably say no.
Thank you
But I
for-
mean, then if you have a comment, we can look at it.
Thank you.
Here you have.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
We have nobody else as far as speaker cards are concerned, so I would take it that you, sir, are with the applicant? Very good. And since nobody else spoke, we are probably not going to have a rebuttal in this scenario because you're just the only person here. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. And although if we have any questions, we might open it up briefly to address some of our questions with you. Ms. Palmer, do you want to start off?
Sure.
Are there some discussion points first that you'd like to discuss, or do you want to go right into your thoughts?
We've discussed a few things. I'll just go right into where I am with this. We're not sure if this is ever going to be an historic building. I appreciate the fact that they are going to repair, but I have a problem with it being attached and being similar materials, even though you can't see too far down the sides. I think the height is the same, and that mass spreads that out, and I think you lose the continuity of that four-square building. And when you have a site like this and a potentially historic building, it's not just the building, it's the surrounding environment with that building. And the reason that house looks so good is it's set way back, it's just right in the middle of the lot. And to completely fill in that rear lot and attach it, I just think it takes away from the integrity of that building. It's not what it originally was. If it were to be left as is, I think the materials would have to be more in liking with the existing materials. I don't think the stone as proposed is a good complement to the building. It would have to be the same stone. It's a stacked stone type now. The railing, I think, you're using hardy board siding and manufactured wood, composite wood railings. I think this all detracts from the original building itself, and maybe that can be resolved by making materials that are more in liking with the original house. I noticed that the first floor plate height is 9'9", and the second one is 9 feet, and maybe that could be reduced a little. Because right now it's maybe looks like it might be 6 inches above existing building. So I don't know if reducing that height would help. I just think there's a huge mass there, and that mass is hurting the existing building, which I think should be saved, but that's really up to the applicant to do. I see a few discrepancies on the floor plan, like windows, that I don't see in the elevations, and I'm not sure where that's going, but there are some issues there. We have some planting areas around the perimeter. I'm assuming those are going to be in raised planters because we are over the parking structure. But I think there needs to be a study with the adjacent buildings, as I brought up with the apartment, making whatever openings are there, make a conscious effort to work with the existing buildings so that you're not directly in, or the balconies or the windows are directly into those. And it sounds like that really hasn't been looked at this point. I would suggest that. Let me look through here. If the parking structure were to stay where it is and the way it is, let me find it here. I'm looking at the disabled access in the parking structure, and if that were moved over one to where the trash is, it might make it easier to get the trash out. At this point in time, I don't know how you're going to get the trash out other than wheeling it across the units. And my other comment on that is to you have a very narrow parking space on the compact space to have access from the parking up to the upper floors, and that's right next to where the walk is. So if anybody with a bigger car parks there, you can't get up the walk. So maybe flip that to the other side.
I'm sorry, Chair, Board Member Palmer, could you repeat the last part, the flipping?
Okay, are you on the parking? Are you looking at the
Yeah,
parking? See where parking lot space 6 is located?
Okay.
That is like a compact space, and if a larger car parks there, that's the only access through that door and up the stairs. So
And
that-
no compact spaces are permitted, so just
Well, I'm
to,
just saying it just looks like a smaller space.
Yeah, the way it's drawn, it's actually 10.6 wide, which is required next to a wall.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
We
Maybe I-
do expect
Yes,
that,
that's-
we expect that stair will be very rarely used. The
Okay.
main stair plus the elevator are to the east.
Okay. All right, you got me on that one then?
sorry.
And let's see. Oh, on the right, let's see. On the north side, there shows a block wall. Does that block wall go all the way to the street? It looks like it does. 6-foot block wall.
Shouldn't.
No, it cannot go all the way to the street.
Maybe it's just the way it's drawn, but
Which drawing are you looking at?
I'm looking at the site plan.
A3? No.
It's a 6-foot block wall, and it looks like it goes all the way to the street, so I'm just, it may be the
And this
property
is,
line.
are you referring to A1 or I'm sorry, which sheet?
A1
A1
on the north side.
on the north side.
See the little note that says new block wall, 6 foot?
Oh, yes.
Correct.
That's not-
It does show, but that's just, no, it would not be able to be
Okay.
all the way.
Can't
You'd have
go
to
into the setback.
outside of
That was
the,
just a question. And I think that's my comments for now, but as it's shown, I really would like to see it separated. And I think Mr. Simonian's comment, if it was possible to push that back, might be a good suggestion.
Okay. Mr. Charchian?
Yeah, I'm going to join in Ms. Palmer's comments for sake of time, because I agree with each of her statements, especially the refuse area. I can almost envision maybe considering flipping that with the staircase and pushing the building back a little bit to get some separation between the buildings is a possible solution. And having the stairs right next to the elevator might be a little more useful. It would change the exterior design, but if you're going to get rid of the handicap ramp for the existing building, I think that would work well in that space. I am concerned with the historic aspect as well, and I want to comment on something that was stated earlier by the applicant's representative. When you buy a historic property or an older property in Glendale, it's not uncommon that you run into these issues. And I understand that the homeowner had purchased this property a while back, and they were hoping to tear it down and building a 6-unit apartment complex. And there's a lot of apartment complexes on this property, on the street, including a very hideous one at the end of Cedar there, that's made of cinder block. In my opinion, very hideous. But that doesn't mean that we don't preserve the assets that we have in the city of Glendale. And I think there's only 4, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe there's only 4 examples of a 4-square style craftsman-esque home in the city of Glendale. So this is, we're talking about rare, very rare building here. So I commend the applicant for choosing to preserve, and that's one of the reasons I'm giving them leeway on the back, because I believe that it is a little bit of a massive building that overtakes the unit in the front, and I would really support some sort of redesign that would allow there to be some separation and that mass to be further pulled back. I am concerned about. I like the detail of having the railing that kind of wraps around on the second floor between the double wides, the sliders up there, and the front door. But I think that also creates privacy issues for the northerly neighbor. And I think that we would ask staff to look at the privacy issues and maybe what that becomes as a balcony and not a wraparound. And then as far as access points, I think the applicant should consider internal access points to allow better access to the back, potentially having bedrooms with sliders might be something to consider. I know that it borders commercial. The other question that I had was I wanted a clarification, and I want the staff to just look at this. On the rear elevation, at one point it states that it's a 3'6" elevation. At another point it says it's a 9-foot total elevation increase. If it's a 9-foot elevation increase, I would be concerned that it overshoots the back parking lot area, and then you basically have this common space hanging over a commercial parking lot. So just a clarification would be probably necessary there.
And just so I understand, you're talking about the grade change?
The grade change and the build up to the back on the east elevation, for example. There's a detail that says it's 3'6" on the and then but when you look at the north elevation, that seems to indicate a bigger build out. So that subterranean build out, that semi-subterranean build out, how far up does that go on that back side? Usually we talk about that in other semi-subterranean build outs, but I just would make sure that that's not, creating a situation where that common space is hanging over that commercial parking lot that's on Glendale. That's about it. I did have a question for staff. Do we know how many windows will be actually preserved? You said there's going to be some of the more prominent ones, but is that 1? Is that 2? Is that
3?
3 total?
3 total.
Which are they?
They are located on.
One on
If you
the
take-
east.
I'm looking at like A4.4,
Okay.
for example.
Actually, there's
I think
under,
4. 4.2, you'll see 3 windows, a pair, and a picture window at the stairway.
The ones that are,
Sheet.
okay.
if you take a look, yeah, on actually
Okay, they were there.
A3,
Oh, I
or on the elevations, the A3 has a window schedule, and then also, you're right, on A4.2,
Yeah.
on A4.2, you'll notice that window C, window E, those are existing wood windows to remain.
Does
And
it-
then also a window on the front elevation. So on sheet A4, there's underneath the porch.
Okay.
And those 3 windows would be remaining.
So kind of
I've covered my concerns.
Yeah, I obtained some clarifications from Mr. Platt. And apparently, all the windows in the front home that are going to be replaced were going to be replaced with wood windows.
Correct.
And what we're considering is the windows in the rear 4 units to be fiberglass.
If I wasn't 100, yeah, it says fiberglass, yeah.
Very good. You know, before I get to my specific suggestions or thoughts, whatnot, I think I'd like to at least present the mindset within which I'm approaching this project. We have a unique house in the front, and I believe most people that had considered purchasing the property had called the city and were warned about the property. And I know the city's been very vocal about it, as in there are some significant attributes of the building that are important to the city of Glendale. Now we have a larger property. On the west side, we have a commercial parking lot, and it was a project that went through this board some years ago. So we have a surface parking lot on the west side. And we have this, multifamily zone property, which just happens to have a significant home in the front. And so we want to build in this area between it. And it makes all the sense in the world to be able to develop the rear portion with something new and to make some sort of economic sense of the property. And the 2 features that one needs to be aware of and design around is the significant home in the front and then the commercial property in the rear, to try to create a livable and habitable multifamily building, and at the same time to also create some sort of common outdoor space that's actually usable for these tenants. And so currently, as proposed, we have the common open space in this rear portion, which is overlooking the parking lot, but there's really no meaningful connection from the lower level units, and we have this stair that kind of comes down into it from the upper level, which kind of reminds me of these exit stairs that are tagged on to existing buildings. And so there's no continuity there. Second is when we're, coming off the street to access the 4 unit, we're coming off of this area, we're going up these stairs, and we could enter these 2 units. And then if we want to go to the upstairs units, we're going into this exit stair shaftish sort of an access point. We're walking up these stairs to come around to then access the 2nd floor. And so, for example, if you're moving furniture up, a mattress, whatever the case might be, you're literally going down up these stairs and trying to make this sharp turn to access the units upstairs. So, and what that's doing is now we have this staircase that's connecting this new with this possible significant home. And what we've done is created a common outdoor space in the rear that's not really accessible. And once you get there, you're overlooking a commercial parking lot. And on the other hand, we've committed all this area to a ramp, which we're all discussed earlier, which is somewhat unnecessary. In fact, it takes away from the entire project. And the applicant's already indicated that they're okay with removing the ramp altogether because this is going to be accessed and used and habitable space by one family. And as such, it makes more sense to kind of have this as the common open space and to shift this building westward, separate the buildings, and create some sort of a nice, meaningful entrance to these units in the rear. Now, the parking structure would not shift. The parking structure would stay as is. I would venture to guess that the 12-foot from eave to eave distance, I'm not sure how building and safety would clarify as to the exact dimension that's required from the existing house to where the parking structure pops out of the ground for a few feet. I don't know the answer to that. However, it seems as though we have a utility room in here, utility space, which could say if it were eliminated and this wall just moved here and everything else stayed as is, enough to clear this area, it seems as though that issue could go away. But assuming the parking structure stays where it is and this house is shifted this way, to easily obtain the setbacks that we're talking about, then we've separated these homes, we've created a nice entryway into these homes, and at the same time, this entry is connected to a common open space, and the house could enjoy this part of the front yard, and if they choose to, use the common open space as well, they just come out of their stairs and go around. So it seems to make much more sense. And there is a multifamily to the north and to the south, and so thereby putting the common open space in this courtyard area wouldn't really get in the way or infringe on the multifamily to the north. So that's kind of the mindset that I approached the project at. So I echo the comments that were made. I believe that if the homes are separated, it'll be more of a meaningful project. If there's a proper entryway that's created, it'll make for a better project. And if we have common open areas that are accessible from the units, it makes for a better project. And so those are really my thoughts of the site planning of the project, along with everything else that's been mentioned. And I think it's something that if we do go in that direction, there's certainly enough here for us to revisit this project one more time, or we got to be really clear on our direction and then staff takes it over. Yes?
With regards to the separation between the two buildings, if the new addition at the rear, the subterranean garage, was attached at the lower level, and this is a hypothetical case, but if it was still considered attached, meaning abutting the existing structure, and that stairwell only was somewhere relocated within the new addition, and if the two buildings were essentially attached at a subterranean type of level, they would not be required to have the 12-foot separation.
Even better.
Now, does the board have a strong feeling as to what the minimum dimension for that separation would be if they were not held to that 12-foot minimum separation if the buildings were completely detached from one another?
By that rear property line, setback is.
I think the easy.
Well, do you understand? But
Yeah,
there's
I
a
understand
distinction
the
between
question.
you're requesting a separation between the two buildings to sort of allow that existing residence to remain in situ, and then allow for a 360 type of circulation or visual accessibility throughout the entire residence, and then to actually have the rear, the 4-unit, quote-unquote, addition to be separated, but at what would be that minimum distance of
I
separation?
don't think a minimum would be a walkway. You don't want a walkway around the whole building. That 3-4-foot walkway is not enough of a depth. Larger than that. You have to make it look like it's a separation, because the building essentially is half again the width. I think it needs to be a usable space.
Yep. Well, currently the stair is some 8'6" or whatever it is wide, and as we demonstrated and discussed earlier, the building could easily shift 3-4 feet. So if that happens, there's a 12-foot separation right there.
And by the building, you mean the 2 residential floors, not the subterranean garage.
Correct.
Garage
So
isn't
the
moving
garage could
anywhere.
stay it is, and the garage's
Far
stair
back.
coming up could stay where it is, because they could be open to the sky. They don't need to have a cover. And so there could be stairs coming up, which then go directly into, so if these stairs were to come up from the parking garage into this area, it could directly feed into this common open area entrance, and at the same time, that connection in itself would suffice as far as the code is concerned for not significantly altering the site plan. And then on the lower level, we have a 15-foot 9 and 17 feet, which could even go to half of that, could shift half that. But assuming we keep the same relationship of the first and second floor by simply shifting it over, if we reduce the 17-foot 5 setback on the second floor to 11 feet, which is what's required as your average, we've gained 6'5" right there. So the building could easily shift 6'5", and then the stairway could actually get relocated in this area where it's a nicer stair going up.
This is all assuming we don't have, we were told in the design review process there was an easement issue that ran across the back of the site, not just there's the telephone pole where the garage has to be notched out. There may be another 5-foot easement, which still gives us room to push the house back and create a meaningful space. I just want to remind the board that may be an issue we have to deal with. So we'll definitely check on that. If there isn't that easement, then we'll push it as far
'Cause
west as we
I think
can.
the 11-foot setback on the second floor is going to be more strenuous than the 5-foot utility foot. Now, if the utility
Also the
pole
radius
has
from the lines.
from the lines, right? So that's something that needs to be looked into.
In that easement, if it's required to have that easement, and you are required to have plant material screening between residential and commercial, could that planting be on that easement? Is that a possibility?
I'm not sure. You
believe so.
you can't have certain plantings under utility lines, but you can have.
But I'm just saying, on the easement, if it's, you'd have to be required to have the planting anyway.
Right.
So,
So I'll put a condition, whether this is returned for redesign or with conditions to verify all easement statuses relating to setbacks and how that would affect any movement of the new building to the west.
The one, just to add, the minimum width would be 10 feet for common open space at the rear. So,
moving that open space.
But we're shifting it next.
right, but I'm just letting you know that's, so in order for it to count towards the required open space, if they would have to provide 1,000 square feet within.
1,000
Yeah.
or 800?
Well, in this case, they're required to provide 200 square feet per unit for a total of 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
The other one's on the side.
So you can split it up, but I'm just letting you know that we have to make sure that they can provide
I
a
think-
certain portion at the rear
I
as well.
think they will be, because assuming the 200 right now suffices for the single-family home, because 1 per 200, so we're basically shifting this mass into this entire area in here, and this is going over.
So, if I may, Chairman.
Sure.
I need to get some clarification now that you indicated some areas of concern for me. The elevator that leads up to only the first floor is not depicted in the renderings, correct?
It's a lift, essentially.
It's a lift. So it basically comes to...
It's a lift, it's not an
No, it's not an
elevator.
It's a lift.
Comes up to the level of the private, or the opens, the first level deck.
Okay, so that lift is really not going to be utilized by the residents. It's just really a handicap lift.
Unless
Calling it an elevator.
the
It's a
resident is
handy-
Not
handicapped.
an elevator.
It's not an
No,
elevator.
it's
So it's a
not.
lift. So it's basically, so not something that somebody would use on a regular basis.
Unless they needed to.
Unless they needed to, yes, unless they...
And again, whether if you're carrying groceries or whatnot, you might use the lift.
So that comes level. My thinking was, in looking at the subterranean cutout, and I'm just going to do it up here because it's easier, is, and I would need my colleagues that are more experienced with this, if you moved this stairway to the trash area, right, so that stairway is coming up at that point, you would have an 8 foot 3-inch clearance, at least at this point, maybe not right there. Wouldn't change the subterranean plan, and you would be next to that lift for access points, and then you could do a little bit of redesign. Does that seem something that's feasible?
Or the lift could even be shifted to a different south and the stair tower move further
Yeah.
north. So.
As staff has indicated, all is necessary is some structure to connect the two on the lower level of the subterranean level. So whether that's the trash or the lift or the stair, something in that place. But absolutely, you could shift
That
it
could-
up and down.
So I think that, I think that staff should be looking at that, because if we did that, you'd have that separation and a slight movement back of the building with the easements in the back would allow us to have that setback. And then getting rid of the handicap ramp would create additional square footage for the common space for that unit, and I think it balances out. So I could see this being handled by staff.
And if I can just throw one thought out, and I see a number of different options for moving things around and certainly shifting the building back. The advantage of having the stair tower kind of located behind the building rather than pushing it north, the stair towers tend to be blocky volumes that you don't really break up easily in articulation. Maybe toss a couple of windows on it. If we move it to the north, it'll be more visible from the street. So.
Right.
I believe the applicant.
Okay. Well, have we,
Read what we have.
yeah.
Oh,
No, I realize that. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page first, and then we'll do that. So, Mr. Platt, do you want to kind of read the conditions as stated and where we are right now? And I will give you an opportunity, sir.
Sure. I'll start with the one that I think I've repeated a few times in here, but it's basically shift the building mass as far to the west as possible, moving the common open space to the north, central part of the site as much as possible to accommodate code requirements. Then I'll go to the individual ones. The stone cladding proposed at the new building is not the right look, and it should more closely reflect the kind of early concrete block. So maybe a split-face block would come closer to that. If I also see the possibility of bringing siding all the way down to the ground if the commission or if the board were interested in that. One proposed condition from board member Palmer, I was a little uncertain. Were you saying not to use hardy board on the new project? Or?
no, I just meant the materials between the hardy board and the composite railing were not as compatible with the existing, so if that could be a little more closely aligned.
Well, for us, hardy board is compatible with
No, I'm
with
fine with the
siding.
hardy board, but I'm just saying it, when you add the composite railing, it sort of changes everything. So if maybe the railing is
Okay, so
more
we'll
in line with,
identify a material for the railing that's more compatible with the kind of the wood look.
exactly. yeah.
Okay.
And was the size of the hardy board, using the different sizes, was that because of the size of the building?
That was a staff recommendation to provide some variety. We didn't want to go with a shingle horizontal siding to duplicate the house, but we thought that would provide a little variety and help with the mass a tiny bit. There was a recommended condition to reduce floor-to-ceiling heights to bring down the overall height of the new building somewhat. Is there
Which
consensus?
might be a moot point once
If it's
it
moved
gets
back,
all...
it might not. As attached, I think it's overpowering.
And staff was comfortable with this height because it's set back far enough that it's never going to, you'll
No,
never
we're
see
okay
it.
with the height. I'm okay with the height.
Okay, so we will definitely work to carefully go over the drawings and correct any discrepancies between plans, elevations, et cetera. We will look at the adjacent buildings and ask the applicant to provide site plans that include the adjacent buildings with their window locations. We'll probably also do a site visit to try to reduce any privacy issues or avoid privacy issues. In the garage, we'll reverse where the disabled striping area is, so that's across from the garage, and possibly move the handicap space so it's adjacent to the lift, wherever the lift ends up if it shifts. We will work with the applicant to revise the drawings to show that there's no 6-foot-tall block wall in the setback portion along the north property line. We will, similarly for privacy, will work, and this may change depending on the redesign, but the narrow section of the deck on the northeast corner that abuts the neighbors will work to eliminate that or mitigate it. We will verify that the site is as flat as it seems to be, and that whatever the drawing is showing where there's a radical or dramatic rise of the podium at the rear hopefully isn't the case. It doesn't seem like it would be on this site, so I think it's a drawing error. We will find ways to make the common open space have a more meaningful connection to the units. This also might occur just by shifting the building back and having the front doors be able to access the common space. And we will work with Glendale Water and Power and Building and Safety, whoever else we need to verify any easement issues, to identify the maximum setback, and that will be our kind of baseline for shifting the building to the west.
And the only one item that I think might have been mentioned, but I didn't quite hear it, was at the same time that the entrances are being redesigned, or reconsidered, is the main staircase that provides access to the upper units be integrated into that consideration or condition.
Just a point of clarification, so I can maybe add to that. Is it a requirement of the city that that staircase be completely blocked off with a roof as well? Or can it lead up to sky?
We have open staircases, so there could be
open.
We didn't think it worked as well with this typology, but it would reduce
But
the
if-
sense of mass. So.
But if you go behind that tree, and this is just I know we're going off a little bit, but if you go to the behind where the palm tree is, so that provides a fair amount of cover from the street. If you did a one-story enclosed staircase that goes to that patio, because that patio up on top is I believe 7 feet wide.
Generous,
Yeah, it's a 514 square feet, so that's 12 feet wide. Maybe that staircase is a sky, opens the sky up on that patio, allowing access to those
That's
units
what I'm
up there.
thinking. If it gets shifted into that patio area upstairs, it would work much
Yeah,
better.
and then you'd have the separation.
And we would still have our required, this has a lot more private open space than is required, so it would
Make the
take
place
a bit of that
better
away.
place to rent, yeah.
So we'll redesign the new building to better integrate the stairway with the building, possibly shifting the stair so that it comes up through the patio areas at the northeast.
Is this, in the sense of time, is this a good time to call the applicant up? Have we gone through all the items?
Yeah, that's everything I had.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
We'll
and
open
there's-
up the public portion again.
There was definitely a condition to eliminate that handicap ramp for the primary road.
Oh, that was already a staff condition, wasn't it?
It was actually a consideration, so in this
so
case,
it's
it sounds like it's a
Make it
definite.
a condition. Good.
Yes.
Thank you for the comments. Very good comments.
And your name for the record? I'm
Armin.
sorry.
My name is Armin Garai with GA Engineering. representing the owners on it. And I really appreciate your comments, very well thought of, and you got years of experience over here working for us. As far as the back, pushing the building back, that I don't have any problem with that. If it is, in fact, 8 feet, that would be very good for us. I don't have any problem with it. We will shift the building 8 feet back, eliminate the back space as common open space, and we will make that into patios for the 2 bottom units, so that be like private open space.
Private open space is very valuable.
Okay, doing that, if we push the building back, if assuming 8 feet, and we'll check with her. If the building comes to the back, we don't need
On the second floor, it's minimum of 8, average of 11. On the first floor, it's minimum of 5, average of
even on the rear yard.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Well, anyway, we will take it back to the easement.
Right.
Assuming 8 feet, we'll just go with 8 feet. We have 17 feet. We will shift the building back 9 feet, 10 feet almost.
Assume it's somewhere between 8 and 11. You got to think of it that way.
Okay, whatever. The 8 feet, 7 feet, 7, 8 feet, whatever it is. What I really like to do, and if it's okay with you guys, that stairway coming in from shifting the building back, I will go into the basement. We will shift the stairway right where going back to where the utility area. I don't think they need that much utility room for a 3-unit building. So if I shift it back, it will take that space over here. I relocate my handicap parking, so you give me the trash area access, and also we can service the stairways going from the top. Pushing that will give me more space for the separation between the building and there. What I'd like to do is eliminate that stairway at the ground floor and come to where the balcony, where the little patio in front of the building is, and we will create a
Can I
interior.
make a suggestion? The way the board is set up and the way these hearings work is there is a big chance that there's going to be some miscommunication
Yes, I
between what
understand.
you're, which I could tell is very clear in your mind, but I could tell you it's not clear in our minds where you're going with this. So what we'd usually, just so you understand the process, is we either, which I think is leaning in a direction where staff is going to work with you, and you'll
Yes.
have every opportunity to bring up all these thoughts with staff, and based on the conditions, you guys work together and solve these matters. But it's not something where if you just tell us a few things and prescribe it, where we're going to say, that sounds good.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. What I want to do is pretty much say, if we can create the stairways, if they terminate at the ground floor, but they don't, let's assume that ends at the ground floor, doesn't project up above the ground. So, like you said, the open park stairways that goes down to the garage, that would not affect the architectural of the building.
Yes, but
if
what
there is-
you need to consider is you need 2 forms of exits on this building. So at some point, you got to take stairs upstairs.
Yes,
in
I
the
understand.
front.
Yes.
Okay.
No. But that could, you mean to the second floor?
Yes. How do you access your second floor?
Then you come inside where if you go to the patio on the first floor.
Here we are again.
No.
There's
What I
gonna
mean
be
is,
miscommunication.
if we can,
Here's where I suggest. Do you have a specific question for us?
as long as we keep 10-foot separation from the building to the 12 feet?
No. What?
You'll have to work with staff.
Yeah.
No, but what kind of separation do you need from the new building?
We're
from
we're
the
going to work very closely with you to make sure we meet all of the conditions you've heard from the board and meet our code and meet any easements
It's
and other
complicated.
issues. So
It's not something that
ask
we
for it.
could tell you because there are many things. If you
Gonna get
shift
to
your
know each
stair
other.
over
Okay.
and you no longer touch or abut on a subterranean basis, then the 12-foot separation from eave to eave will apply. Okay, exactly. It's complicated. As such, I suggest that
I think we can meet it, but
I
we
think
will
so
work
too.
on it.
I think you're going to be able
Yeah,
to do
we-
just
we-
fine.
I think we can meet it.
And it's going to be a very successful project. So with that, I'd like to close the public portion.
Thank you very much.
Very respectfully. And,
Take a motion?
yes, take a motion.
Oh, and we would also like to add all of the staff conditions and considerations that were in the actual staff report as well.
Correct.
With the revision, I'm so sorry, with the revision that the handicap ramp is no longer a recommendation,
Correct.
but a condition.
A condition, correct.
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions.
I have a motion by Board Member Charchin. Is there a second?
Seconded.
And a second by Board Member Palmer. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Charchin,
Yes.
Board Member Palmer, Chair Pro Tem Simonian.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-0.
Okay.
We have some board minutes.
We do. We have minutes dating back to March 12th, 2015. And at that meeting, I'm not sure if you'd like to carry it over. Board Member Palmer and Board Member Simonian were here.
We'll have two.
Yes, exactly. So why don't we go ahead and, if you don't mind, we'll postpone it to the next meeting.
I think we should just save them all at the end of the year.
I think we'd be forgetting who voted which way and how, so what comments were made. So the motion to continue the minutes to the next meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Yes.
Adjourned.
Thank you.